One, one, two. Okay. One, two. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ezekiel Yanfor. Welcome, everyone, to this program. We are here today, and this event has been organized by WWF Africa, and we have an amazing panel today, and the topic that we'll be discussing is about transforming the African continent, the works that have been done by young people across Africa, from making Africa to look like a vulnerable continent to a resilient continent. At this time, I would like to welcome our panel on stage. Max, you are welcome. Adonindeye, you are welcome. Brenda, you are welcome as well. On this panel, we also have Omnia, the COP27 Youth Envoy, who will come after to join us. Firstly, we would like to start our opening remark with Dorad Hellison from WWF, the partnership manager. Can you please welcome me on stage? Dorad Hellison, WWF Africa partnership manager. Put your hands together for him, please. Okay, so he will do our opening remark. You can go ahead, sir.
Hello, everyone. Is it working? Yeah, good evening, and I'm speaking. Can you hear me now? It's better. Okay, thanks. So my name, like the moderator said, I'm Dure Allison. I'm the Policy and Partnership Manager. I'm speaking on behalf of our Regional Policy and Partnership Manager, who unfortunately had to travel back today. And so I'm sitting in for him. And I think I want to appreciate the youth for this invitation. On behalf of WWF, I think we are really pleased to be part of this process because, as you all know, the African youth, by 2050, Africa's will be the most youth, as even now, Africa is the most youthful and useful youth population in the world. I think I want us to retain those two things. When I look at this COP, I think for all the COPs I've attended, when I look at this COP, is the one that I've seen an amazing African youth population. And I think that sends a signal that the youth want to be part of the conversation, not just be out of it, because at the end of the day, whatever decisions we make here today, by 2050, the African continent will have 1 billion children. And we don't want to leave a legacy for these children that will distort the way they think. And for you, as a youth, this is a time, because in 2050, those will be your children, not us. Some of us will already be off the stage. So I think that an event like this, where we are looking at how do we move from a vulnerable continent due to climate change to a resilient, but I would like to emphasize on not just the resilience of it, but what are the opportunities for the African youth to start transforming these issues. And yesterday, I think it was yesterday or so, not the day before, the African Development Bank launched what they call the African Youth Adapt Award, which is basically giving awards, monetary awards, to African young entrepreneurs who are using the opportunities offered by the climate crisis, right, to bring in new innovative solutions for Africa, be it in the economic domain, be it in social, but what are you doing to start transforming? So let's look at the climate crisis. It's a crisis. It has created its own vulnerabilities for us as a people. When I look at Nigeria for the last 2 months with the flood, when I look at the Horn of Africa with all the famine, then we start saying nothing will change in Africa. But let's flip the coin and look at that as opportunities. And the opportunities can only be generated by the youth because they have, with technology, they are more technology savvy than most of us who are here in terms of decision making. So I think the youth do have a place, and we think the moment is now. And I'm glad to see this mobilization, and I'm glad to be part of this panel today to really start seeing how the African youth could start moving things ahead. WWF has a youth transformational program across the continent. And we think one of the things we're offering in this program is how do you build capacity for youth so that they start seizing these opportunities. I would like to keep it there. I would like to keep it short. I really appreciate being part of this. And on behalf of WWF, we want to thank all the youth here today. And that we think that you are the voice for tomorrow. You are the voice for now and the voice of tomorrow to make the change. Thank you.
Wow. That was so powerful. So powerful. Thank you so much, Dora. This is the time for the youth. That's one of the key messages we are carrying home. What are the opportunities for the youth in Africa? What are we doing to start transforming Africa from vulnerable continent to a resilient continent, which of course, that's the reason why this panel has been established to discuss the opportunity to discuss the transformative work of the young people who are on this panel. The youth have a place, and the moment is now. How do you build the capacity of the young people? And WWF is also working in line with that. Thank you so much, Dora. We really appreciate your powerful statement, your kind words. Thank you so much. Now, we go on to our panel. So, Adoluye, you are the founder of Green Growth. And Green Growth is around 22 countries across Africa. There's a very huge number of countries that are doing work with you. So can you briefly tell us about your work, Green Growth? How are you working to transform the continent of Africa, building resilient communities, the ecosystem, and making Africa more resilient to climate change?
All right, thank you. Just to put it in context, I'm not the founder of Green Growth.
Okay.
I'm the founder of Green Growth Africa.
Green Growth Africa, like I said.
Green Growth is a development paradigm itself. And
yeah,
it's
Green Growth Africa.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I want to appreciate WWF for this opportunity and several other opportunities they have always afforded us, and including my colleagues. One of them is here, and I think when you mentioned about Africa Transformational Youth Program, we are one of the partners, and my colleagues are here from other youth networks. So basically, talking about what we do and what I will call our best practices, I just mentioned 5 points. One, our focus on ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. One, as a co-creation, learner-centered approach, cross-learning, innovation, and integration. Integration, I put it last because it's the most powerful one for me, and my key message for this COP. One, when you check environmental education, the way we implement it, what we do in Green Growth Africa is actually we observe that the teaching mechanism and approach for ESD and environmental education across the world, particularly in Africa, has been teacher-centered. That is, the teacher determines the syllabus, the project, the examples, the activities. But this time around, we wanted to give a try to learner-centered approach, where the learners are the ones who come up with ideas, who come up with projects, because they are closer to the project, they know what they face. So we turn it around to be learner-centered. That's one. Then two, we make the teacher to do the work of the student. Oh, sorry. We make the teacher to be the work of the student. Basically, the teacher only coordinates and watch. And we have had amazing results. But before I mention that, I also talked about cross-learning. When students learn, oftentimes we are limiting our understanding and knowledge to our local environment. How many of these students are able to travel here? How many of them? But when we work with students in different countries, we allow students from Africa. I mean, I'm so proud and excited that within our program, we have found students from, because we work for the program I'm talking about, I'm focusing on high school. Now, we have had students from America, United States, and Italy discovering what we're doing with our students, and they came and said we wanted to learn about what we're doing. Over time, it has always been the reverse side. So, with that, that's what we call cross-learning. And maybe I just limit to the last one, which is integration. I say something, and it's a course I'm very passionate about. If all the world is talking about climate change, I mean climate action, not climate change, climate action, fantastic. But the world is even now not talking about climate action anymore, just that anymore, but they're talking about integration. And I'll explain what I mean. If the world is talking about that, the Africa is supposed to talk about integration 70 times. I'll tell you why. We are using solar panel in Africa. They are using solar panel in Germany. Both of them contribute to climate action, but on different causes. Africa is using it for energy access. Germany already has energy access. They don't have a problem with energy access. They are only transiting. Why am I saying this? Africa still has a lot of development gaps to cover. Therefore, the climate action that we will design, that will work in our context, including the one we teach and we engage with our students, must be such that does not just bring down the temperature. Okay, if you come to my president in Nigeria and you keep talking about 1.5 degrees, and he's not going to listen to you. The reason is that he has high unemployment to solve. He has insecurity to solve. So when we are designing and when we are training our young people in school, we try to engage them in a way so that the solution they come up with, climate solution they come up with, are such that does not only address environmental issues, but also solve socio-economic problems. And we've had amazing results, but I don't want to take the time. Our approach has been quite recognized in the world. I'll be leaving here to go collect the Okayama ESD Award, which we are the first organization in West Africa to win it. So I think that if we rethink our approach to climate action and education, particularly with the youth, we're going to achieve a lot of results. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Wow. The last statement is so powerful. Rethink our approach to climate action. You make a very strong point that Africa needs to talk about integration 70 times. And it's very important because climate change is a developmental problem in Africa. So we should not only lower temperature, but our solution should also solve our unemployment rate. It should also be a social solution. You know, that's something very important that I look at, because our people don't only want to hear climate action, reduce temperature rise, adaptation, but their livelihood is important, and that's the work you are doing. Thank you so much. So I will go to Brenda. Brenda, can you also elaborate on the work that you are doing at our Green Girls platform? You can highlight three best practices, how you are transforming Africa from being climate vulnerable to resilient with the perspective of gender, females. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So, as he has already said, my name is Brenda Wale, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Green Girls Platform. So Green Girls Platform is a female-led organization which has been established to address the challenges that women and girls are facing due to climate-induced impacts. So this is the first ever female-led organization dealing with women and girls, because we understand that the impacts that are there, girls and women are mostly affected, but then they don't have the platform where they can actually be able to be in the forefront and take part in climate action. So as Green Girls Platform, we're actually providing that platform. So what we do is we provide capacity building and mentorship projects, and we don't... Can you hear me now? Okay. So what we do is we provide capacity building and mentorship projects, and we don't just work with those that are in schools. We work with those that are in communities and those that are in schools. What we're trying to do is that we know that the impacts are affecting everybody, and we don't want to leave out those that are out of school. And we know that everybody has that capacity and that ability that they can contribute towards climate action. So what we do is our projects mostly focus on demand-driven projects. We go in communities, we reach out to them, we want to know the challenges that they're facing. And then what is it exactly that they want to see in their community so that they can have a climate resilient project. We don't want to go there and tell them these are the challenges that you're facing. And then out of the challenges that they're facing, what do they want to get involved in? For example, there are those that are into afforestation. There are those that want to be trained in green energy. And we find experts who can be there and help them. And it's also one way of creating green entrepreneurship, because we have a team in the southern region of Malawi who are being trained in making briquettes and biogas. And that is not just like solving a climate and energy source, like for them to have access to clean energy, but then also it's also one way of empowering them, because the briquettes that they make, they also sell them, and we find markets for them. And right now, we have a partnership, a membership of like 10,000 women and girls whom we are working with in communities. And we also do advocacy campaigns. So what we do, we have like policy learning sessions in community and in schools. We want them to understand what are the policies that are available in our country, and then how can they actively contribute in that. And one of the milestones that we've made is doing an advocacy campaign on gender mainstreaming on climate change management policy, because we want to make sure that, okay, gender mainstreaming is there in the policy, but then is that really being implemented on ground when climate projects are being implemented? And then we don't want to be the ones who are like in the forefront and tell people to say, okay, we don't have an element of gender mainstreaming actually being implemented on ground. We want people to hear from them. And how can they hear from them? Is by empowering them. They have to know. That's how we offer these policy learning sessions. And also, we do Young Women Negotiators Project, where we're trying, okay, not just for them to participate at COP conferences, but then our governments are here making commitments, coming up with different visions, different policies. Who is going to make them accountable? Even at local authority, the different commitments that local authorities are coming up with, who is going to make them accountable? So if we empower them, even at local level, they'll be able to advocate for change that they want in their communities. I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. It seems that there's a lot on your plate. You are doing more than enough. You know, when you talk about gender mainstreaming, is actually critical when it comes to implementing climate actions, because it is very clear that women are at the forefront and they are most vulnerable. And you made mention of capacity building and mentorship programs that you are doing, which are also critical, because when you build someone's capacity, you got to keep mentoring them to make sure what they have gained can actually be put to work. And I think we need more mentorship programs for women and young people across the continent of Africa. And you also made mention of green energy. You know, Africa faces energy gap, and I think you also spoke of energy as well. So I think it's actually resonating with the panel. So we'll go to Max. Max, you are from Madagascar. And you have a platform or a group or an organization called Bonde. Can you please tell us about your organization and the work you are doing in Madagascar, which of course is an island country, and how are you actually contributing to making Africa resilient?
Thank you. So I'd like to thank our mentor here who made the opening remarks when he said that Africa needs more young activists. I'd like to add that, yes, of course, we need more activists, but mostly we need more active young African people. You know, activism is something, but being active on the field, taking action, and not always waiting is something we really need. So I'm Max Fontaine. I'm the CEO and founder of Bondi, which is a reforestation company in Madagascar. And basically what we do is we make reforestation project, agroforestry project, and a rural development project. The three innovation I will tell you about are some part of our model, but the first one is of course the impact of what a reforestation company can do in Madagascar. We are the first reforestation entity who acts as a private company. Before it was either public or NGOs, but we assume that we are private sector and we plant trees. Of course, we know all the impacts on soil fertility, which is a big issue for food security in Madagascar. There is also the water cycle management that the forest brings to the local population and to the farmers. And of course, protecting the unique biodiversity of Madagascar. 5% of the world's species are found only in Madagascar. And 80% of Malagasy's biodiversity is endemic, which means you can find it anywhere else in the world. The second innovation is, I think, our model is human-centered. Here, we always hear about nature-based solution, technology-based removals, but not enough about human-centered solutions. What we do is, with the farmers we work with, we conceive the project hand in hand with them. We don't have, like a top-down approach where we are like, we are a company, we have a lot of knowledge, PhD students or stuff. We ask them, what do you need? What do you feel? How does climate change affect your daily lives? And then with these answers, we conceive a project which is tailor-made to answer their specific needs and not not try to impose your own model. Of course, capacity building is a huge part in this program. We, for instance, have Champs École Paysan, which is a farmers' field school, where we transfer knowledge about sustainable agriculture farming practices that are more adapted to climate change. So it raises the resilience of these local farmers. And finally, the goal of this Human Center project is to stimulate rural entrepreneurship. By planting these useful trees, for instance, fruit trees or cash crops, how can you create the value locally in the rural areas of Madagascar? So the goal is to catalyze rural entrepreneurship. And to conclude, I'd say that inspiring the youth is also one thing we are really proud of at Bond. Of course, the team of 75 workers is in average really youth, but we also like to impact the youth. We have pedagogical tree nurseries in public school in rural areas of Madagascar, where we work, with the pupils to teach them at the youngest age the importance of preserving the nature, because they are the future farmers of our country. We had 3,000 volunteers who went on the field with us to plant trees. And some of them, came on the Saturday morning from urban areas that come with us to plant the trees. That shows that Malagasy youth, they are well aware of what's happening. Urban and rural Malagasy youth, they know that the effect of climate change will make our country, which is a vulnerable country and an island nation, more vulnerable to climate change effect in the long run. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I'd be happy to answer your question.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We don't just need youth, but we need active youth. It's a very strong statement, because everybody yelling climate change, but sometimes people get so overwhelmed and like, I don't think I can continue this advocacy. No money, we are volunteering, but if we remain active and committed to what we are doing, I think we can do more. And the reforestation is actually key to make Africa resilient. I think that's a very good one. And also human center, projects that make sure that the people are at the heart of the project. And being a private group and you are doing this, we'll give you an applause. Thank you so much for the work. So, yeah, the face of the young people for COP27. Yeah. So, you are the very first ever COP27 Youth Envoy. Very historic. Can we please celebrate her? Clap for her, please. Yeah. And you have traveled across the world, Africa, working with stakeholders and African youth groups, and a lot, both the past few months. And also, we want to know, can you briefly tell us the outcomes of your engagement with your stakeholders, and what are the plans of COP27 presidency for the youth during COP27 and beyond?
Can you hear me? Oh, is it? Sorry. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm so happy to be with you today, and especially with the amazing panelists and learning about their incredible work. And really, it's very inspiring. So this is the first time that there is a youth envoy, and the rationale behind that is that as the presidency, we wanted to have a link between what young people are doing at the front line, the needs of young people, the challenges, as well as the solutions offered and the incredible work that young climate leaders are doing with the work of the presidency, which is facilitating the negotiation process and trying to encourage countries in a way to, as we say that this COP is the implementation COP, so how to translate the pledges and the commitments that we see every COP into actual implementation and practical solutions on the national and the local level. So I started my first consultation when I was appointed in August, and it was during Africa Climate Week, which was in Gabon. And it was incredible to see during that consultation, we had over 100 African youth from Gabon and from the region. And I remember we had three main discussions. The first was on capacity building, and not just understanding climate change, because there are many African young climate entrepreneurs, leaders, experts, farmers around the world or in our region, but how to infiltrate and mainstream our actions and our work into the very complex UNFCCC and climate processes, because this is what we need to drive urgency and to drive meaningful and practical solutions. And the second discussion that we had was around how can we increase intergenerational dialogues, how can we break down the silos between the ministers and the negotiators and young leaders and our demands and our policy asks. And then the third and final one is how can we elevate the work of African young leaders on the ground coming to COP, and how can we empower our work in a way that is meaningful, but also in terms of financially and in technically to have more independent and really scale up the initiatives that we do. And when it comes to capacity building and what we did as the presidency, and this was an initiative that I suggested because I see that many young people come to COP. We speak in different panels, inside events, but we are not there in the negotiation rooms where technically the future and our fate is being decided. And this is what we did is first we developed a youth, not a toolkit, not a 60-page toolkit, but just a 10-page debrief on what is COP, what are the different opportunities we can utilize, what are the sessions that we can attend, the negotiation rooms, but also what are the other private sector opportunities that we can have a strong and powerful voice in, because we see that there is an implementation gap between what countries are saying and what are they doing, especially when it comes to climate finance, which is the biggest debate that we have now here, this COP. And the capabilities of filling this implementation gap is in the engagement of the private sector, having a more sustainable conversation between the private sector and the young grassroots leaders and experts. So this is one thing we addressed in the kit. And then we also had a calendar of all the youth-focused events, so kind of a way to encourage the young leaders that are coming here to identify one or two action points that they want to work on. If you are a youth expert in adaptation, then follow every single thing around adaptation, whether it's a negotiation, whether it's a side event, or even the networking opportunities that you can get with funders as well as other UN experts. And then if you follow mitigation, the same goes and so on. The second thing is that we did is that we know that every year there is the Conference of Youth, which is COI. It has been taking place for 17 years. Every year the COI, it builds to build the capacity of youth to understand climate and so on, but it also develops a global youth statement, which is the official youth input to the climate negotiation process. And during the closing of the COI, the team presents the global youth statement to the presidency. We take a very good photo and that's it. But in Egypt, we wanted to change things. We decided to hold the first ever COI to COP dialogue. And this was actually mandated in the Glasgow Climate Pact in Article 64 and 65. This dialogue means not a panel discussion, but a roundtable discussion where the negotiators, the ministers, and the other influencers are sitting on the same table with the young climate experts. We had the opportunity to demonstrate our policy asks coming from a global youth statement. We had two roundtable discussions, one on adaptation and one on mitigation. We had the ministers coming from Egypt, UAE, Colombia. We had the chair of the G77 in China, the chair of AOSIS, as well as negotiators from the EU, from the US, and from Saudi Arabia, as well as other countries. And this was during the Youth Day, which was November 10th. And the key takeaways, now we are working on them so that we can try to see how it can be integrated in the COP outcome. And this was an exercise, a learning experience to see how we can break down the barriers and have more meaningful discussions and intergenerational dialogues. We will not accept any more events where the ministers are speaking on their own and then the young leaders come and intervene. They get invited for a single intervention and then there is no sustainable follow-up. We are going to demand a way to integrate our inputs in a sustainable fashion. And this also we did during our meeting with the UN Secretary General that was 3 days ago, because we wanted to have a sustainable and a meaningful participatory mechanism for youth to be continuously going to COP, but their inputs are integrated. We've been doing that for many years, and we have Yongo as a constituency to support us, but now that there is a youth envoy, and there will be another envoy for COP28, we want to make sure that COP is the start of meaningfully integrating the inputs of young experts into the COP processes as well as the post-COP positions and decisions and action. The last thing I want to touch upon, which is very important, because I started my work on climate change as a young medical student, and I saw that in my own curriculum, I did not learn about climate change. It was because I joined an extracurricular activity. That should not be the case. Climate change must be a formal, mandatory component in schools and in universities. What I did with my organization is that we are a federation of medical students present in 129 countries. We asked medical students in 112 countries to look at their curriculum and tell us, is it integrated or not? Do they even mention it or not? Is it mentioned in an informal way or is it a mandatory component? And we saw in 2,817 schools, less than 15% mention climate change. And this is very problematic because we as doctors are going to be at the front line of the health impacts of climate change. We are there in the healthcare facilities. We are going to respond to the extreme weather events and the direct injuries that our people are going to come to us with, but we're also going to respond to the heat stress, to the malnutrition, to the mental health anxiety and depression that will be led by climate change impacts. And for us to change that, together with my organization, we developed a curriculum, a climate change competencies that medical students around the world can use to integrate in their own education. And I'm very proud to say that my own university, Ain Shams in Cairo, they are the first university to integrate climate change, not just in the medical faculty, but across all the faculties of my universities. And now they use the climate change course in a competition to see with other African universities and see that it can be an example for all the African university faculties to do the same. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. You've been actually doing Amazing work. So much. Just from August. That's a lot. Yeah. And I think capacity building is the heart of the topic here today. Brenda mentioned capacity building. Adoye mentioned the same thing, Max. And now the Omnia also mentioned capacity building. So I think that's the major takeaway I'm really listening to now. And you mentioned climate change education as a subject, and you use the word mandatory. And you are on the, we are sitting in climate education hub. I think that's the right place, the right time to make such a statement. Yeah, so thank you very much. And of course, you said we shouldn't be outside at events, but what our future has been decided in the closed door rooms. And I think you have a work to do to make sure that young people enter those rooms. So we have faith in you and we believe in you. Yeah. So we are about to enter round 2 of our discussion, and our panelists will also go ahead and take those statements. But I will take Omnia the first, since I think she will have to make a very fast leave. So from the youth perspective, what bold commitments should be made at COP27 to change the profile of the African continent from climate vulnerable to climate resilient? And what is the role of the youth in achieving this ultimate goal of Africa?
Yes, so first of all, when I knew that Egypt was the host for COP27, it was very inspiring to see that this is the first time in 6 years that COP is in Africa. And this was the opportunity and the mission that we had as the presidency to place the issues that affect our continent the most at the forefront of the climate negotiations and discussions. And this is why, for the first time, loss and damage is now an agenda point. And at the same time, we are pushing for placing adaptation even as equally as mitigation was put. Because in the previous COPs, we saw a lot of good, powerful commitments, always made for mitigation, for transition, for net zero carbon, but very little attention was put into adaptation and loss and damage. And the arguments that were being made is how can we create a good business model for that, but not really placing the needs of the people, especially the most vulnerable communities who had the least contributions, especially in Africa where we had less than 0.6 of the carbon emissions, but we are faced to bear, to see, to feel the impacts of climate change on our families, on our friends, on our communities. And that is why in Egypt we made the commitment and we made the pledge that we are not going to spare any effort from placing adaptation at the forefront as well as loss and damage, and really pushing countries to translate their commitments into implementation and the ways that they're going to pay for that. But then where does our role as young people come in? I see that as youth, our voice is very important because we put in the pressure and we are very persistent in doing that. We are also very independent and bold in our own asks, in our own commitments. We tell things as we are. We are able to name and shame countries who are not pulling through, and we need to keep doing that because we not being at the negotiation table is very frustrating and makes us very anxious, but at the same time, it should not stop us from doing our own events, from doing our own actions and our own demonstrations every single day, because this is important and our voice matters, because we are not just representing ourselves, we are representing the young people who are not able to be there today. But on the other hand, when we're looking at how can we infiltrate the negotiation rooms to bring in our asks and the needs of our continent at heart. First is yesterday, I did the first, together with my team, a gathering of the young climate negotiators, because many countries in Africa, by the way, have young climate negotiators in the rooms. Tunisia has 15 young climate negotiators responsible for adaptation, mitigation, and so on. I know that in Kenya, and I met the Minister of Environment of Kenya, they have a cabinet where they have many young climate negotiators as well as members in their team that are under 35. And this is important because they are our allies. We can come up to them and give them our policy asks, learn from them, how can we mainstream it and integrate it, because it's important for us to understand what's being discussed in the room, how can we adapt our policy asks to that, and then how can we evaluate the outcomes based on what will be produced at the end of COP in Sharm el-Sheikh. Another very important process that we need to infiltrate is the global stocktake process. This is going to take place formally next COP. But at this COP, they're discussing what is the global stocktake going to look like. This is the formal process that the UN created to ask countries assess their progress towards the 1.5 goal, towards the net zero carbon emissions. And this is where our actions on the ground can be demonstrated, our questions can be asked, and we need to ask the right questions. When we talk about NDCs, are they responding to the needs of young people? Is it youth sensitive? Does it take into account the efforts that young people are doing or not? Because we are doing a lot of instrumental impact on the ground, and this needs to be taken into consideration. We need to push our countries, but we also need to push the global policymaking community to take into account our actions, and this is where I see our role in. I also see a huge role of the Children and Youth Pavilion, because every other day we're inviting the ministers, the prime ministers, the policymakers to our space. So it's the opportunity for us to ask them the necessary questions and then get out of them pledges and commitments before they leave the pavilion and they leave our space. So I hope this answers your question.
Yes. Okay. Powerful. So now, Omnia will take a leave. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. I think Alex will walk you out. Yeah. So, like she said, loss and damage. We have to push loss and damage. For Africa, adaptation should be as important as the topic of mitigation is. We have to create a business model. I think that fits Adedoye on a statement business model that should also benefit, economic growth and development for Africa. We have to turn this COP to an implementation COP, not the same as usual. The young people, our voices are very much important. We got to keep making sure our voices are heard. We have to find a way that we enter the room. The global stocktake, we need to ask the very hard and right questions. So yeah, I think we are getting there. So that goes to Max, the same question.
So I'd say that if there is one thing I've discovered by working on the climate change issues, is that I'm really proud of how Malagasy youth, as I said, is well aware of the climate change. It's sad because we are aware of it because we live it. And Omnia talked about the loss and damage fund. Madagascar, this year, we had 7 deadly cyclones. So that shows that the effects the youth are living are today, and we all know that they are only getting stronger and stronger and more frequently. So, of course, we have a crucial role to play in that fight. And for instance, we have a really young delegation also in Madagascar. There is a lot of youth. Youth have been awarded to some side events. A lot of Malagasy youth also spoke during side event, and there is many Malagasy young negotiators working with the government or with other institutions. Okay. The main goal we have as a youth organization, and I'm talking in my name, but also in the name of the 75 people that work daily in our company and the 3,000 volunteers that are coming in the field with us, is that we push in our daily lives to conceive the society we want to live in the long run. All the actions we are doing today are not for today's result. It's a long run bet. And what we want is a society where environment, capacity building, resilience are not only part of a presidential program or a development strategy. These have to be the center of the model of our society. Could it be in the industry level, energy level, waste management, agriculture, transport? These sectors have all to include the matters of climate change. And this is the work we are doing in our daily lives.
Thank you so much, Max. Adeduye.
Okay, thank you. I'll make 3 points on this. First again, integration. But I'll explain so that we see the practicality of what I mean by integration. Now, I don't think there is any country in the world that dedicates 10% of its annual budget to the Ministry of Environment. There is none, not even on education. Now, so if the Ministry of Environment and whoever they support, if they are the one addressing climate issues, keep in mind that money also includes biodiversity and other issues. So let's assume 10%. Now, the rest of the 90% goes to other sector, and they can do it anyhow without being conscious of climate. What that means is this. We are using 90% of our resources and livelihood to pollute the environment, and we are trying to address it with 10%. It doesn't work. Now, you see, when we have the Ministry of Environment, fantastic, they are doing a lot of good work, and that's fine. But can we find a way, develop mechanisms? I'm talking about commitment that I think that we made here. Can we find a way where the Ministry of Health in each country, where the Ministry of Transport in each country, when they are awarding contracts, they check not just environmental visibility, but looking at how they have integrated environments in it, such that each project in itself is sustainable. That's one. USAID, GIZ, and the likes of them are here. They sponsor a lot of projects in Africa. Thanks a lot. Can they look at projects that they fund and say, even no matter what it is, even on agriculture or whatever, does it address not just how it doesn't pollute the environment? No. What contribution are you giving on environment and climate issues? And that brings me to engaging the youth. Oftentimes, I really want to appreciate all organizations that have supported the youth to be here. Really appreciate them. And of course, even what we have is not enough. We need to have more. However, I was surprised towards COP. A lot of announcements. 1 week to COP, 2 weeks to COP. There is one funding there. Apply. It ends on 28. Where were those fundings in January? Many young people who came here spent close to sometimes $3,000. Please ask me, how many of them had $3,000 to implement projects? We cannot continue to come and talk and talk and talk. We spent $3,000 just in 1 week. For the rest of the year, we don't have money. I mean, in this, I really want to commend WWF, not because I'm speaking here. They really support us a lot, and I really, really appreciate that. So, that's that. And, that's talking about funding and building the momentum of youth engagements beyond COP. And the last point is local solutions. You see, the thing is, when organizations, all these $100 billion, $100 billion, how does it get to me? My organization implement a lot of projects across 22 African countries. Sinesa is here. They are one of our partners. We work together. They are in different countries. How does those money get to them? But let me even say this. We are even organized youth. Many of these actors are not organized. Many of them cannot write concept notes. How do we define the funding mechanism such that it can reach out to them? I think these are issues that need to be trashed out. And let me make the last point. You see, in my view, most of the actors for climate are not here. Many of them are in the village. They don't even know about COP at all. How do we ensure the money gets to them? Thank you very much.
Wow. A powerful one from him. Brenda, you can go ahead.
I don't think I can top up that, but I will try. For me, what can African youth do? As he has already said, I think it's high time that we flood every sector that's there, because we are in majority, and we have the potential and we have the capacity. There are those that have the advocacy capacity. There are those that are good at research. There are those that are good negotiators. There are those that are good actually implementing projects on ground. And then can we make sure that we are there like in every sector? We have so many commitments that our governments are coming up with. There's so many visions that our governments are coming up with. But who is going to make them accountable? Because, okay, their commitments say, oh, this government is going to give this a much amount. But how are we going to make sure that those who are actually implementing projects on ground, they're going to be able to receive those amount, receive the resources? What are the funding mechanisms that he has already said to say, what are the funding commitments that a local organization in Malawi is going to be able to have access to those funds? You find that even the process to be able to access the funds is even complex. This is not even friendly for those that are community-based organizations to have access to those funds. And then, for example, the adoption of the loss and damage funding agenda being a sub-item under climate finance. It's all thanks to the CSOs that have been acting, like pushing to make sure that the agenda is there. But then I think we should also, let's not give up. Let's not relax to say, oh, now the agenda is there. Like it is now a sub-agenda. We really need to fight because this is just the beginning of the fight. Our young negotiators inside those negotiation rooms, it's high time that we put pressure. We make sure that we're actually putting pressure. Our interventions ahead. And then those who are like on the outside, can we make sure that we're putting pressure? What are the funding mechanisms? And then our governments, if they're coming up with policies and commitments, we have to make sure, like the NDCs that have been submitted last year, what are the frameworks? What are the action plans to make sure that they're implemented? Are we just waiting for next 5 years so that we can review our NDCs and then submit the other NDCs, reviewed NDCs? So as youth in majority, I think it's high time we fried all the sectors, all the channels that are there to make sure that our voices, our interventions are heard. Thank you so much.
Wow, powerful closing from everyone. Our takeaway, capacity building, localizing climate finance. The mechanism should be established. We should make sure that the young people in the negotiation room, our interventions are heard. Pressure from outside, pressure from inside. I think that's a very good strategy. So that's why we want more young people to be in the negotiation room, because we'll be keeping them accountable, holding them accountable on what they have said. And as we make more intervention during negotiation processes, we should be able to lobby for support from other young people from other countries. So the more we are in the room, the more the reality can be made. Should we review NDC in the next 5 years? How are we implementing NDC? Is it cross-cutting? All in all, our goal here today is to celebrate these young people and other young people who are not yet at COP, that are fighting every day, they are working every day in the local communities, in the least developed countries, the small island states, to make sure that Africa leave the state of vulnerable to a resilient continent. Thank you very much as we close this meeting.